Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. This is a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. It's Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. It's 6 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. Note that all council members are present and turn to Councilmember Emilio.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
We need a motion to approve the agenda, but I suggest that we table item 12B. That's the stained glass donation to a date uncertain. That's because that donation application has been withdrawn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. All right, next, it's my pleasure to issue a proclamation. And Mr. Sullivan, if you would join me. And your board?
And Rachel, please join us. Meredith, please.
Yes, Tama.
Our,
Yes.
our sole emeritus board member, you belong to Peter.
All right, it's my pleasure recognizing the Museum Foundation of Pacific Grove. Whereas the Pacific Grove Museum Foundation of Natural History exemplifies the values of education, community engagement, and preservation of heritage. And founded in 1883 as the Chautauqua Museum, around a collection of natural specimens, being one of the first natural history museums in the nation. The Museum Foundation of Pacific Grove entered into a partnership with the city of Pacific Grove in July 2009, almost 15 years ago, or over 15 years ago, to operate the museum with the mission to inspire discovery, wonder, and stewardship of our natural world. And as the first cultural institution accredited in Monterey County, reflecting the museum's unwavering dedication to standards of excellence in all programs and services. And whereas the museum has a rich collection of nearly 40,000 objects, including 6,000 that are available for research through an online database and many on exhibition, the museum actively engages the community in hands-on data collection and conservation efforts, has community science programs such as Night Owl, Limpets, Watershed Gardens, Guardians, Western Monarch Count, Science Saturdays, California Naturalist, the list goes on. And whereas the museum educates thousands of visitors, residents, and students, K through grade, from across the Monterey Peninsula and beyond, whereas none of which would be possible without the dedication of the Museum Foundation Board, its staff, and volunteers. Now, therefore, I, Bill Peak, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Pacific Grove, do hereby recognize the Museum Foundation of Pacific Grove, its board, staff, and volunteers for their outstanding efforts and contributions to our community. You can clap now. It's a good time. Thank you very much.
My name is John O'Sullivan, board chair of the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History Foundation. Dear Mayor and City Council members, on behalf of the Museum Foundation of Pacific Grove Board of Directors, we thank you for this formal recognition. Since 2009, the City of Pacific Grove has entrusted the Museum Foundation to preserve and interpret the collections for the public's benefit. For over 140 years, the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History has served as a gathering place for the community, inspiring wonder, discovery, and stewardship of natural and cultural history through education programs and our outreach. We are proud to continue our public service for the city of Pacific Grove. And again, we thank you.
And would you go ahead and introduce your board and staff?
Our board, I'll start this in, this is Tama. She's our only board emeritus for her historic working with the foundation and within the community. Our executive director, Rachel, she's been with us for several months and is doing an outstanding job bringing the museum to new heights. Matt, board and the executive committee secretary, Olivia, works with Matt on the development committee. Lisa Max wears two hats. She was interim executive director until Rachel was hired, and now she's on the executive committee. And Sean, he is our board treasurer and also on the executive committee.
Thanks.
You have your seat.
Yeah. And I want to recognize, the city has its museum board, of course. I want to recognize them. If you would please stand. David Messman, he's the chair. Donna Foote and Calvin Tom. I think Dana is not here. Is that right? She's not here. All right. So thank you for your service on the city board. And that's it. Looking forward to another great 15 years or more. We now have staff and council announcements. Mr. Pyrick?
Yes, we had a closed session earlier this evening and there is no reportable action.
Mr. Mogensen?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask our acting police chief Anderson to come on up and make an announcement in a second while he does. Many people have probably noticed we did a press release was released that announced the retirement of our chief Matt Malone. And her last day, well, her retirement day will be October 12th. Just want to let everybody know that during this time, while we go out and we look for the next chief for the city of Pacific Grove, Commander Anderson will continue, Commander and Acting Chief, sometimes we call him Commander in Chief, Anderson will continue to hold down the fort and keep that good leadership for our police department. So wanted to make that quick announcement. And then also if you could please tell us about some of the excitement this afternoon.
Yes. This afternoon about 3:15, we got a call of a mountain lion sighting in the area of a 400 block of Lighthouse around 11th Street. Our officers responded. They did spot the mountain lion resting peacefully in the side yard there, right at 11th and Ocean View. So we obviously immediately contacted Fish and Game. Their biologists immediately got a hold of us, advised us that the best course of action would be to let the mountain lion stay where the mountain lion is, to rest because it's sunny out and they don't like the sun. They like to keep cool. And wait until the evening hours, and more than likely the mountain lion will leave the area and go back to its normal stomping grounds. With that said, if the mountain lion does not move by morning, the biologists will come out and tranquilize the mountain lion, and then they'll relocate the mountain lion to where he or she belongs. In the meantime, we do have 11th Street blocked off between Ocean and Garden. And residents, of course, are still free to move up and down. Obviously, we recommend that people stay out of the area. Please don't, walk your pets around the area because animals tend to alert each other. And we're trying to let the mountain lion rest peacefully until the cool evening hours. With that, we are periodically checking in with Fish and Game. Fish and Game is standing by and keeping an eye on the mountain lion as we speak right now. And that was the events for this afternoon.
Thank you. All right, any council announcements? Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you. Mountain Lion, make sure it doesn't go to Del Monte Park area. Anyway, on November 11th, at 11 o'clock at the Lighthouse, is going to be a Veterans Day celebration. And that's November 11th at 11 o'clock. Vets Day. And then I happened to be, it was about a week ago Tuesday, I was at Pine in Fountain in the morning hours, talking to Missy and watching the traffic in the morning. And it seemed like to me, I'm not an expert on that, but somewhat of an expert, but everybody was pretty much stopping and she hit the light, stopped. The only backup I ever saw was people dropping off their kids. That was about what I saw in that one day. And but all in all, it seemed to be working fine. But that was one day. That's it.
Any other announcements? Councilmember Beck.
Thank you. Yes, this weekend, this Saturday is our annual butterfly parade. So we want to make sure everyone attends that with our school age children. I think we have the marching band as well. It starts at 10:30 on Pine, and it goes down Fountain and west on Lighthouse, and then up 17th and back on Pine Street. So, and I'm not sure what year it is, what like the 50th annual, 60th, who knows? But anyway, it's our annual butterfly parade. So look forward to doing that. Thank you.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. As all of you may have noticed, our council agenda features a couple of appointments to boards and commissions, and I wanted to point out that there are some vacancies available on the task force for diversity, equity, and inclusion. For those who are interested, I would recommend that you apply. Thank you.
And I'll note that our housing department has a landlord presentation on Thursday at 6 p.m. That's tomorrow at the community center. All right. With that, general public comment, please come forward if you wish to speak. Welcome.
I want to start off by thanking all of you for your public service. I don't think you guys here thank you enough. And I know it must be a very hard job. Just getting here tonight to make this public comment, I had to think about it. I mean, it's a lot of work you put into it. And Debbie Beck, I relate to you personally on many things, and just all of the time and effort you put into this. And we may not always agree politically, but as of last night's debate, which showed some civility, which I was very impressed by. I hope we have more of that in our society because I think we really need it. That's my own opinion. But I'm here about street sweeping. And I'm here because I have brought this issue before the city 3 years ago. I spoke to Mayor Peak and he said to call Public Works. George First and I have been on a lot of discussions, and I was promised over a year ago that it would be taken care of. But the street sweepers come on Wednesday. And I still work for a living. I love my job. I'm a school teacher. And what has happened is that they started about, I don't know, 3 years ago or something. I noticed a lot of leaves collecting, and I got little critters in my car because a lot of us in Pacific Grove, we don't have garages. We have to park on the street. And it is really a nuisance to, for me to sweep the leaves. I don't mind, but once a month, it's nice to have them done. And I believe it's a city service that I pay for. And there has been nothing done, absolutely nothing. I don't think I'm alone. I sent to you, I have a correspondence, includes the street map and everything that people I live on Grand Avenue, but a lot of the city is affected like me. And I've called, I know it's still happening because I saw Timco drive by my house today, avoid my garbage cans and just miss my street entirely. So please, I would really like someone to take care of this. This has been ongoing for a while, but most importantly, I'm here to say thank you because you guys do a great job. I'm proud to live in the city I do. And thank you again.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. This is Butterflies, Butterflies, Butterflies this week. I came here tonight to invite the city council and members of our community to come down to the post office or communicate with our new committee. It's called BBB, Bring Butterflies Back. Can you show the first picture? Sandra? As most of you know, I've worked on this for almost a year now, and I haven't been real thrilled about, I need the other one first. I'm sorry. I haven't been real thrilled with the progress that we've made, but we can start over. And we went down to the BBB committee was down in front of the post office today, and I can tell you this, the public is all over this. They want it. It's a wonderful gift to the city, and it will come back when we have a chance to get significant public comment about where they want this wonderful piece to go and to see whether or not if it's feasible. It's a big piece. And they loved it, loved it, loved it. So I encourage any members of the public or the council that wants to be involved. We have things to do like review records or make calls and find out information. There's been a lot of misinformation. And if we get it all together and we get today some people had suggestions of other places where they wanted it to be than we've been talking about. Okay, Sandra, next one. It's not that important. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so we have been discussing the museum, and this is a picture of it with that Councilmember Coletti did. And from what my information is that the butterflies stained glass that used to hang on the top of the Holman building for 4 decades, it's stunning. It's beautiful. It would look really nice up there. And the public was very supportive of this. So I ask to be patient as we get our information, and we'll try to get the correct information and bring it back to you. And hopefully Nader will renew the gift. But I think he wants to have a little bit more progress in terms of public input. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just if you could just come to the podium and speak, you can hold it up and so we can see
See
it.
this? I have
Yeah.
terrible eyesight, so I can't see it at all. Following up on Susan Goldbeck's presentation, I am part of the BBB committee, Bring Back the Butterflies. We refer to this stained glass window as the butterflies. And we sat in front of the post office to plant the seed, to get feedback from the community as to what their feelings were about this stained glass window. Many of the people were longtime residents of Pacific Grove and remembered when it was on top of the Holman building and how iconic this particular image is. Well, the feedback was astounding. Who is Mr. Coletti?
Ma'am, we don't take, yeah.
No, I have
No.
to sing his praises because he came, yeah, this is all about you, because he had made the suggestion of putting this in the window in front of the Natural Resource Museum. And what we did is we showed this picture to people along with the picture that she showed before of the Natural Resources Museum window space. People were delighted. They were overwhelmed. And I just wanted to share a couple of comments we heard from the public, even though we said other ideas, like maybe the side of the library that's got a big blank wall, maybe where Erdley and Lighthouse come into Pacific Grove, that might be a good place. We put it all out there. And they said the idea of the Natural History Museum was, the exact words, a stroke of genius. And we were like, really? So that wasn't all we heard, Mr. Coletti. We also heard, besides stroke of genius, excellent idea. It could be magical. If it's, well, I have a really booming voice, so I don't normally need a microphone. So anyway, they said, excellent idea. It would be magical if it's backlit and the kids at Christmas time are singing Christmas carols in front of this image. Some people said we could rename the whole area Butterfly Square. And then when they saw pictures of the hotel, this in combination with this beautiful hotel that's going up, people were really excited. And just a couple of more comments. I like the butterflies, absolutely. Let's call it, I told you, Butterfly Square. Ah, that's awesome. I love it. What a perfect place.
Thank you.
Is my
Your
3 minutes?
time is up. Yes.
I'm terribly sorry. You get the idea. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.
Welcome. Do we have another speaker?
Hi, Mike Gibbs, I'm a member of the EDC. I'm speaking on my own behalf. Kind of a theme tonight is participation. We've got participation in the butterfly feedback stained glass, which is spectacular. We have several city council forums over the past couple of weeks. One last night, 4 of 6 city council members were there. We had a very interesting, active, and kind of fun discussion. So I appreciate everybody being there. I'm from a fairly large family. I was the oldest of the kids. And by the time I was 13, my family had moved a bunch of times. So before I got in high school, I was in 6 different schools. The way it worked was my parents came home. They said, we're moving. This is where we're going. Yeah, well, you'll know when we get there. Okay, good. New school, new friends, start all over again. And it was a little bit disruptive to me and my brothers and sisters. So when Peg and I got married, we had a couple kids and we moved a couple of times, not as many. And it really impacted me to get participation, get everybody's input. And so we would have a family meeting. I knew we were moving, but we'd get the kids in the room if we had a choice. In one case, we had 3 different cities that were recruiting us to come. And we sat down with the kids. We asked them 1, 2, and 3. And they always said, well, there's a number 4 where you go live with the grandparents because they got a swimming pool. And I said, well, we're not going to do that. So we had participation input, and we tried to listen to kids and we involved them in the decision. One of the things that we heard over and over again at these city council forums was participation. And one of the candidates last night said, you know what, sometimes public comment is kind of reverse. On a specific item, council should have their say, and then the participants should speak after the city council. One of the things that happens is that items come into consent. And some of them are very interesting. Some of them are very important. We have one tonight. How it gets on consent as opposed to in front of the public is kind of a mystery. And I think it's a problem with transparency in any city government, and especially Pacific Grove. So we need to find a different way to get items on the consent agenda, out of the consent agenda, on a formal agenda for discussion of the public. Because often what happens, as may happen tonight, there are 3 proposals. If it's on the consent agenda, there's very little discussion, knowledge about what's going on, and it ends up getting forwarded, and one of the proposals gets picked. And then later on, it's like the kids, we're moving where? I got to go to what school? I have to have what friends? There's no kids in my neighborhood. Why didn't you ask me? And I still remember those moves, every single one of them, and they were painful. So let's make this process less painful going into the future. New mayor, new city council members, let's keep these things in mind and get everybody involved. And a good start is with the butterfly stained glass window. I've seen that thing and it's spectacular. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I want to start off with something I wasn't planning on doing. I want to back up Ms. Jill Kleiss, who spoke about the street sweeper, comes every Wednesday. That's where all our garbage cans are out, and guess where he goes? Right down the middle of the street. Doesn't pick up anything around the curb. And I've already communicated with the city staff, and they said they were going to address this 3 months ago. And guess what? Nothing's changed. So I want to back her up on that. She's got a good point. Now, why am I really here? I'm here to bring back up for the maybe fourth month, third month, about the roundabout, which 4 of you inappropriately passed. And I want to say why I think it's inappropriately. A matter of this magnitude should have been notified to the city community. Oftentimes we send out flyers like about the marijuana, what do you think about it, and several other issues over the history of Pacific Grove. This item was too big to just be decided by a 4-3 vote, you know, and 2 of the people who voted for it, and I take issue with that, are running for office again. And I hope the community realizes how this all happened. We have an out-of-town agency called TAMC, Transportation Authority of Monterey County. They are historically known for coming up with frivolous, expensive projects, like the bicycle lane down the middle of North Fremont Street, which serves no useful purpose. Okay, what a joke. The only good project is the roundabout up at Highway 1 and 68 intersection, because it was a busy street with a stoplight. To put a roundabout, or call it a roundabout, it's not really round, it's more peanut shaped. To put a roundabout next to the Mission Linen Project, right in front of the high school, corner of the fields there, is absurd. What is the problem here? You know what the only support I see for this, and it's very small support, oh, this is going to save the planet from climate change because people won't have to stop at stop signs. Give me a break. This is not the intersection of Highway 68 and Highway 1. What are you thinking? Without having a town hall or an open forum for people to come and voice their objections like I'm doing now. And let me tell you, most people are against this. So those of you who are running for office, who voted for it, someone running for mayor and someone running for reelection on the council, Mr. Bedori and Councilman Nix and Councilman Pedori, I'm appalled that you came and brought this into the city in such a terrible, expensive project. $7 to $10 million, even with some grants. Guess who pays for the grants? It's not the government, it's the taxpayer citizens who pay for the grants. So you make it sound like, oh, we got a grant for it. Well, you didn't get a grant for the whole thing, and this is absurd. And you should all work, whoever gets reelected, gosh, I hope Dan Miller gets elected mayor because he'll stop it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to fact check, there were several community outreach events. I attended one of them. And no decision has been made on the roundabout. Right, Commander, welcome.
Yes, I didn't get a chance to talk with Mr. Mogeson before today's meeting due to the mountain lion. And so I wasn't sure what the proper forum was in regards to what I'd like to present to the council this evening. So I thought public comment would be the best. On September 17th of this year, Pacific Grove Police Department responded to a report of a missing elderly person, Mr. Xingfeng Li, who had gone for a walk early in the day and did not return. Officers promptly initiated a search, and professional staff immediately began a records and social media post. Officers focused their search on Rip Van Winkle Park area, where he was last known to have walked. Despite initial negative results, the search was expanded, and the CERT team joined the efforts. Mr. Lee was eventually found safely in Del Monte Forest. Disoriented but in good health, officers reunited him with his family. The Lee family recently expressed their gratitude for the professionalism and compassion shown by the officers involved in a letter addressed to the department. The letter highlighted the department's critical role in ensuring community safety and the Pacific Grove Police Department's swift action and dedication to this case. However, tonight, what I want to present to the council is that this letter reflects a larger group that was instrumental in resolving this case successfully. The police department could not have been successful without Public Works ensuring that our patrol vehicles are operational and that the roads are drivable. The information and technology department keeping our software and computers running. We could not have done this case without that. The finance department making sure that the lights are still lit in the police department and the bills are paid. And so on. The point is, every city department, including you, the council, doing their jobs well, played an instrumental role in the Lee family receiving excellent city services in their time of need. Subsequently, I thought it was important to share Leah's family gratitude for the services they received for all the city staff, even though they may have only interacted and seen members of the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers? If not, then virtual audience.
Thank you, Mayor. Carmelita Garcia.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your service. So speaking of the mountain lion, I think we all should also be on alert for the deer in case the lion gets hungry. So, you know, I would ask the city just to be on the lookout for that injured deer or carcasses, whatever. And also, I did notice on Facebook, the police department congratulating 3 new officers that have been hired, which is great. I hope they get to come in and be introduced to the city council. So that's really great news. It's nice to see the police department getting new officers and building up their staff numbers. So thank you, everyone.
Good evening. This is Dixie Lane, and I first wanted to say something about the butterfly parade. Actually, this is, I believe it's 95th year. The first butterfly parade was held in 1939. So it's been around a few days. What I really wanted to find out about if we're going to hear an update on the stop signs at Fountain and Pine. I saw that the traffic committee meeting or whatever commission, whatever it's called, was canceled that following Tuesday. So I know that part fell through the cracks. And it's really something we need to get resolved. Somebody's going to get hurt and the city's going to be totally accountable for it. At any rate, I've been to about 4 or 5, I think 5 of these meet and greet. We have these meetings, about 20 people with the people running for office, and they're just like coffee clutches, and people that they don't know tends to meet with them, and you know, we get to know. And every one of these, the stop signs have come up, and people that go through that intersection, they say they're still stopping because it's too dangerous to drive through, stop sign or not. And it is. I've almost been hit a couple times, and I almost hit a pedestrian once. But anyway, except the people then behind you start honking their horns. And so it's just, it would be nice. It would have been nice if we would have had community meetings. And that's the other thing that keeps coming up, is that our long missing community meetings on different topics are no longer part of our life. So anyway, I just wanted to share that information, and hopefully you have some to share with me. Thank you very much.
No further hands are raised, Mayor.
Right. Anyone on council wishing to pull a consent agenda item? Councilmember Beck?
Anything, but I just would like to make a comment to public comment with Commander Chief Anderson is thank you for thanking everyone. I would definitely like to thank our residents and our taxpayers that keep these departments running and our city running. So thank you to them. Thank you.
Anyone from the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item? You can just shout there, Mr. Gibbs. I think you got a loud voice. All right. Anyone from the virtual audience?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
All right. Motion?
To approve consent without 8B. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. Gibbs, if you could come forward to the podium, please, and state your question or comment.
Mike Gibbs again, EDC speaking on my own behalf. Appreciate the work of Lori McDonald, who was actually at the event last night. Thank you. And the other folks that worked on the evaluating the 3 proposals. I believe there was 3. And there was a request for proposals. If I read it a while back, but I think it was recommending for $100,000. I'm not sure, but 2 of them came in under that. One of them came in significantly over double that. So I believe it or not, I read all 3 of these proposals. Really quite interesting. I learned a lot. I did some research on the internet, and I went through them all and just have some comments. I'm not sure I have a recommendation, but this is one of the comments where I think public visibility would be a good thing. These things should be. We're talking about long-term commitments of lots of money, and we should have more public discussion, public meetings. Maybe that can be folded into the process, after the fact. But not going in any particular order. Blue Strike is a local company, and they would have come in first on the evaluation sheet, but for the cost, right? And significantly ahead of everybody else. What I'm worried about is that some of the things that are in the proposal don't make sense to me. If they reduce that amount, they're going to clearly be number 1 and move up. And I'm always suspicious about that sort of thing. So we'll watch and see. They talk a lot about climate resiliency. All of them do, but in this case, it's really about climate equity. There are some subjective tools having to do with this climate resiliency. One is called Livelihoods Change Over Time, or LCOT, LCOT. It's been sort of a disproven tool, but what it does is it focuses on land use, private property ownership, food insecurity, income inequality, and land use. And I'm just wondering, I know those things are sort of tangentially related to climate change, but it seems to me like that's an outline for scoring residents on their climate equity stance. Didn't see any references. Jacob Green was selected by Seaside. I got some emails about them, and I would just check with Seaside in the references. They all are going to complete their effort in 1 year, but Jacob Green cited some references. 8 of the references were hazard mitigation only. Only 3 were climate action plans. They were long on assessments, reports, feedback, meetings, information, and strategies. Long on deliverables, not much of a mention of results. They did give references. The last one is Sarah. I was kind of impressed with that one only because they took a more practical approach to energy efficiency and water use, particularly from a traffic and infrastructure perspective. Those are things we can do something about. A lot less on the subjective stuff, and they gave results. They did the Googleplex complex at Moffett Field in Silicon Valley. It was a huge project, and they did so successfully. I'd like to see, if I was going to pick one, that would be one I'd like to see. So more discussion on these 3 options. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I want to follow up what Mr. Gibbs said and support him in his comments. It seems that there's a movement going on in the community to excessively address sustainability and oppose man-made climate change. Most climate change is natural. Over the history of the earth, we have had periods of extreme warming. We've had periods of extreme cold. Some of you may remember from high school and junior high that 12,000 years ago, 1/3 of the Earth's surface was covered with miles thick of ice called the glacial epoch. And during the last 12,000 years, guess what happened to the ice? It melted. And where did all the water go? It went into the ocean. And what happened to the ocean? Sea level rose without any effect or interference from the cavemen, the mammoths, or the saber-toothed tigers. Okay? Now there's a lot of effort to stop cows from expelling gases. Well, don't you think the mammoths and the saber-toothed tigers did that too, way back then? And even the cavemen probably did. Well, in any case, let's continue. Any efforts by the city of Pacific Grove to think that they're going to have a magnanimous effect on climate change, to reduce man-made climate change when 95% of it is natural climate change, is totally ridiculous. And to spend any amount of money and involve the city with committees and efforts and staff time and all this sort of thing is totally ridiculous. The impact that Pacific Grove is going to have on any amount of climate change is negligible. And this is what I was saying earlier about the roundabout. You know, it's, oh, we got to stop climate change. We got to stop the cars from stopping at the stop signs because they're emitting too much gases that are affecting the temperature of the earth. Give me a break. You know, that's as silly as these people that buy new cars and every time they stop at a stop sign or get in traffic, the engine turns off for a few seconds. Then they have to restart their engine, putting more wear and tear on their starter. Is anybody commenting on how many starters we're going to be throwing away and having to replace? How much copper and other resources are going to be necessary to repair and rebuild and resupply those starters? This thing has gotten so out of hand, it's a joke. Yet the media and certain parties, certain political parties promote this and push this to get people's sympathies, to break their hearts. We got to save the planet. We have to build a roundabout. We have to spend money on committees. We have to do something in the city to save the planet. Pacific Grove has very little chance of saving the planet or influencing any natural tendency of the climate to change on its own naturally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any virtual public comment?
No, Mayor, no sorry. Lisa Gianni.
Thank you. I just want to say that it's really a privilege to be able to listen to the Climate Action Committee deliberate on the issues that they're dealing with and the plans that they're dealing with. And I know everybody can't attend meetings at 4 o'clock, but that might help people to understand. And I think the population of the Earth is a tad bit larger today than it was back at the last sea level rise and ice age and whatever. So this is a real problem. Obviously, we have to deal with. I appreciate that the council has recognized that. And I appreciate the efforts of the members of the committee who are working diligently to develop a plan and move forward. Thank you.
No further hands, Mayor.
Turn to Councilmember McDonald. Do you have any words? Do you want to?
Really, I appreciate any public input. And actually, I think what Mrs. Chowning pointed out is that is one thing that we do have available is we have these discussions during our climate action and adaptation committee meetings. So please feel free if you have any comments to come and attend those meetings, give us input there, because the whole idea is to have as much of an open forum as you can have with a Brown Act meeting, but we value your input. So please feel free to join us at those meetings, and interviews will be going forward in the coming weeks.
Okay, great. All right, on to item 11A, Mr. Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've actually been working closely with the city attorney on this one, and he's ready to give you a little bit of background on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. This item is an proposed introduction of an ordinance to amend Chapter 7.40 of the city's municipal code to increase short-term rental penalties in accordance with SB 60, which has been codified in Government Code Section 36900. Council may recall that this was on your agenda for the meeting of July 17th, 2024. It was then continued to August 7th. And the direction at that time was to return to the council with a proposed ordinance, which would amend your code. It would allow for increased penalties as authorized under the government code in SB 60 for violations which are the result of impacts to public health and safety. So the attachments include the prior agenda report, and attachment 2 is the proposed ordinance. And the proposed ordinance includes provisions with respect to the violations which would constitute impacts to public health and safety. there's a number of them listed here. There's also a hardship waiver request that can be considered in reducing or offsetting the penalty provisions. And that's required by the government code to have that type of provision. And then in subsection G of the proposed ordinance, there's a list of the various violations, including the short-term rental use of a residential property without a appropriate license, exceeding the occupancy limits in terms of overnight, exceeding the limits at daytime, violation of the city's codified noise, not the noise ordinance, the noise ordinance, operation of auctions, commercial functions, and other similar activities, failure to dispose of solid waste, failure to properly store solid waste in refuse bins. The ST owner, site manager, guest, or any occupant of the STR unit engages in disorderly conduct and other conduct which is determined to be a threat to public health or safety. So the action that's recommended tonight would be for a request for the city attorney to read the title of the ordinance, and then a motion to waive for the reading, hopefully, and then to introduce and hold the first reading and to direct a summary of the ordinance to be published. And I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you. Public comment, please come to the dais. All right, virtual public comment,
No virtual public comment, Mayor.
council discussion. Councilmember Cleddy,
I'm prepared to make a motion when you're ready, Your Honor.
please.
I request the city attorney read the title of the ordinance.
Yes, I can do that. This is an ordinance of the city of Pacific Grove, amending Pacific Grove Municipal Code, Chapter 7.40, limits on short-term rentals to clarify enforcement of infractions.
Second.
Okay, and then the motion to waive further reading of the ordinance.
And you could
And
just
then-
make a motion for the remaining recommendations.
Make a motion to move items 2 through 4.
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Right, on to item 12A. And that is Mr. Burek.
Yes, it is. This is an item that involves the California Voting Rights Act. And there's some history to this. And I'm going to briefly go through that so that the council and members of the public perhaps haven't seen the previous meetings, but just to make sure we're all aware of what this background is. So in July of 2002, there was enacted what's known as the California Voting Rights Act, sometimes called the CVRA, and that's incorporated into the Elections Code in its attachment to the agenda report. And then on August 25th of 2022, the city received a letter from Andrew Sandoval of the League of United Latin American Citizens, known by the acronym of LULAC, inquiring about the cities and potentially changing and transitioning to districts. At the time that letter was received, the city of Santa Monica case was still pending and had not yet been decided by the California Supreme Court. It was anticipated that that case would provide some guidelines or some assistance to local agencies in determining when it was necessary to transition to districts and when it would not be. So that was in August. On March 6th of 2024, the subject of the CVRA was discussed by the city council. I should mention that when that letter came in from Mr. Sandoval, it was posted within days on the city's website. So on March 6th of 2024, the subject of the CVRA was discussed. By that time, the city of Santa Monica case had been decided. So there was a discussion about the city of Santa Monica case. If we can go to the first slide, we'll see how far ahead I am on that. Okay, well, I guess I'm right in line with the slide. I was mentioning the March 6th meeting of the council where we discussed the CVRA. I went through the history, mentioned Mr. Sandoval's letter. We had a discussion of the city of Santa Monica case and various other CVRA related issues. One of the items that came out of that March 6th meeting was authorization for the city manager to retain a demographer to prepare a report on the demographics of the city. That was done, and the city manager presented that to the council on July 17th of 2024, along with a copy of the report that had been received by the National Demographic Corporation. They're known by the acronym of NDC, not to be confused with NBC. The next event was on August 23 of 2024. The city received a letter from Ms. Farias, also with LULAC. She requested that the city formally transition from at-large to district-based elections to comply with the CVRA. On September 4th of 2024, again, there was further discussion about the CVRA, going through the city of Santa Monica case, the various rules that apply if you are going to transition to districts, what the public hearings are that are required, all the process that would be necessary. And the council at that meeting gave direction to return to the council with a resolution of intent to transition to districts. Next slide, please. So a few words about the California Voting Rights Act. I've made reference to it a few times here in my opening comments. This, as I mentioned, was enacted and is incorporated into the Elections Code. A plaintiff is required to prove that there is racially polarized voting that results in a dilution of the ability of a protected class of voters to elect a chosen candidate. They are not required to prove that there will be at least one district that has a majority of minority voters. And what that would mean is that if you had a district that 50% plus one would be minority voters, they don't have to prove that under the CVRA. And it also expands the ability of plaintiffs to recover their attorney's fees if they are successful. And defendants, if they're successful, they cannot recover their attorney's fees. Next slide, please. So the cities in Monterey County which have district elections include the city of Monterey, Salinas, Marina, Greenfield, King City, Soledad, and Gonzales. Next slide. I mentioned again in my previous comments about the city of Santa Monica case. I discussed this when we reviewed it at the meeting on March 6th of 2024. We reviewed it also on September 4th of 2024, and I'm going to restate some of the information that came out of that case, because that is a case that many cities were waiting for to see if there was going to be a test, if you will, to determine when a transition to districts would be necessary. And what the court held was that a plaintiff must prove that the combination of at-large voting and voting patterns reflecting racial polarization resulted in a dilution of the ability of protected class voters to elect a chosen candidate. However, there is no bright line percentage beneath which an action under the CVRA cannot be sustained. So for example, if there was a particular district that had 12% minorities and there was an ability to create a district which would increase their opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. So let's say that the minority population is 12% of your population, and then a district is created and that it would increase the percentage of minority voters within that district to, let's say, 18% or 20% or 25%, some number. There is no formula to determine what that increased voting strength, if you will, must be in order to require you to transition from at large, which is what you are now, to district voters. So without that bright line or test or formula, whatever name we want to give it, it is difficult to determine when you should and when you shouldn't. But I should mention that there are no cities that have successfully defended against a CVRA lawsuit, and many of them have incurred many millions of dollars in costs and attempting to defend those cases, including the city of Santa Monica, which last I heard was over $20 million. Next slide. All right, so a word about the process of the transition. I would mention again, as I have, that this process to transition was discussed on March 6th of 2024 and again on September 4th of 2024. So this is our third time to look at this, which I think the reason we have given this the amount of attention we have is because it's obviously a very important issue. When you're changing your electoral system from an at-large voting to a district voting, that's a major change. I believe that by allowing for the dialogue that we have had at the council meetings, having the public hear the discussion, provide us with input, it's all very important. So the process for transition is to retain a demographer, assuming you're going to transition to districts. You would then adopt what's called a resolution of intent to transition to districts. There are 2 public hearings, and these hearings are held before these so-called district maps are prepared. It's an informational type meeting. It can be facilitated by a consultant such as NDC. And here NDC has been retained, and that's one of the action items that we'll get to later on in my later slides. You publish draft maps and the election sequence. There's hearings on those maps. The public can prepare a map. NDC can provide information as to how members of the public can prepare these maps and submit them to the city. There's going to be a website that's going to be out there that's going to help to facilitate the process, assuming that you decide to move forward. So next slide, please. And then you will publish additional maps if there are additional maps that come in. My experience has been that there are times when the initial maps may be adjusted based on council questions, public input, new information. So if additional maps come out of that process, then there would be a second hearing on the draft maps. You would at that point select the preferred map, which would identify the districts within the city. Then there's a final public hearing. It designates the sequence. What that means is which districts are going to be up for election at which elections. So in terms of the number of districts, I'll get to that in a minute. And then the final step in this process is the adoption of an ordinance. The ordinance would be approving the maps and the sequencing that you've selected. As with all ordinances, I think we're all aware of how that works. You have a first reading, sometimes called an introduction, and then you have the adoption of the ordinance at the second reading. And then the ordinance becomes effective 30 days after the adoption. Next slide, please. All right, Measure Z. Measure Z, you may not know it by that letter, but to remind you, what that measure is on the ballot for the November election, general election, and it is the one that wasn't voted upon in the 2022 election. And I think I understand it was not successful by I think it was 13 votes. So it's back again for this November for consideration by the public. Council voted to put it on the ballot. And how does that impact the process? Because I think that's an important consideration. So as it's indicated on the slide, that if the council adopts the resolution of intent, which is one of the action items on your agenda for tonight, then if the ballot measure Z is approved by the voters, then the number of districts that would be included in the maps would be 4. And the mayor would still be elected at large. So the Measure Z does not change the position of the mayor. The mayor is going to be at large regardless of what happens with Measure Z. So that's one thought. A second thought is that if the city adopts a resolution of intent to transition to districts, then if ballot Measure Z is not approved by the voters, then the number of districts that would be included in the district maps would be 6. And again, the mayor is elected at large. So that's the relevance of Measure Z. Can we have the next slide, please? So the recommended actions, there's 4 of them, and I'll recite what they are. The first one is to adopt the resolution of intent that is in the form shown as attachment 1 in your agenda packet. That resolution does indicate that the number of districts to be created is going to be dependent upon the outcome of the election on Measure Z. So you're not going to be able to start drawing your maps until you know how many districts you're drawing them for. So that's the essence of the resolution of intent, and it would provide that the city would initiate, that's the first step, if you will, initiate the process for transition to districts. And then after the resolution of intent, you follow the transition steps that I went through in a previous slide for you. So that's action item 1. Action item 2 is a motion to direct the city manager to develop a tentative timeline for conducting these hearings. Remember, I told you there's a number of hearings. There's the informational hearings. I hope that's not for me. Maybe I'll pause for a minute. All right. So there's, since we were interrupted by the siren, I'll start this one over. So this is the second item. It would be a motion to direct the city manager to develop a tentative timeline for conducting the public hearings. Remember, there's a series of public hearings. There's the informational ones, then you draw the maps and you have hearings on the maps. And then you have the hearings on your ordinance and such. And then also for formulating the maps and the election sequencing, and then coming back to the council with the draft ordinance. So that would be the second action item. The third action item is a motion to direct the mayor to sign an agreement with LULAC to extend the date to complete the transition to district-based elections within the safe harbor provisions of Elections Code Section 10010 to March 1 of 2025, provided that LULAC agrees to that extension. You may remember that, what did I say? Okay, thank you. I misspoke. I meant to say March 31 of 2025. Thank you. Provided that LULAC agrees to that extension. So maybe I could pause here for just a second and explain that there's time limits for holding these various hearings, and the code provides an opportunity to extend that time up to 90 days. If you adopt the resolution of intent today, that 90 days, the first window, if you will, of the 90 days would expire on January 1 of 2025, which would mean that there would need to be all of these hearings that I described in my earlier comments pushed into a very short window time frame, especially since we don't even know how many districts we're going to be creating until after the election results are in on Measure Z. So we'll be asking LULAC to agree to that extension to give the city more time, plus to be holding all of these hearings during the holiday seasons of that are in November and December is not public friendly, if you will, because people are going to be visiting with friends and family during that time, and it would be a much better public process to allow this process to proceed in a more methodical manner, invite further public participation, and get all this done by March 31. Now, I should mention that this election, that this time extension shouldn't create an issue, because the process that we're talking about changing to isn't going to impact any election before March 31 of 2025, and there is no election for council in 2025 or the mayor. So this should not be an issue. We don't expect. And then the fourth action item is a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a First Amendment to the professional services agreement with National Demographic Corporation, NDC, for further demographic services in an amount not to exceed $49,000. That particular agreement would encompass the services of NDC to assist with the transition process, do further demographic studies as appropriate, explain to the public with various slides and explanations of the whole process, assist with the drawing of maps, be available to respond to questions. And NDC has done this for many public agencies in the statewide, and I believe that they've done that as well. Pardon me. Yeah, city manager's reminding me that they assisted your school district with the transition, and I think there's some of the cities in the county. So they're very well known, very qualified to assist in this process. So that is the presentation. I'm available to answer questions if you have any.
Do you have any public comment? Please come forward. Welcome.
Behalf, I kind of look around, I think I'm maybe one of the last three people on a sinking ship here. Nonetheless, I'm a little bit familiar with LULAC from previous cities that we lived in. And I'm just reading off their website. They're a 501c3, not really organized to do political efforts, but they do. They endorse candidates. That's the first thing to remember. But their mission is LULAC advances the economic condition, educational attainment, political influence, housing, health, and civil rights of Hispanic Americans throughout the community-based program. Somebody mentioned that the school district went to 5, and everybody remembers what happened. Frank Rivera was in my district. He was ejected by I was in my district, so I had people come by speaking against Frank, not for the other candidate. And this one Hispanic candidate we had in any public position was ejected under a district system in a community where we need Hispanic leaders. Okay, so I just want you to remember that. I call it the balkanization. It will lead also to one district. People in one district, think of the Beach Tract, lobbying for candidates in a district that they don't live in for political purposes. It's happened before. What happens if there's nobody running in that district? We have one district right now in the school district, there's only one candidate. If there's 0 candidates, the process stops working and appointments and other things take place that are not democratic. So I know this thing is kind of a foregone conclusion. I don't like to be threatened. I don't like to be pushed into a position. I think it's wrong. I'm not sure anybody can stop it. They're a political organization. Last thing is, my wife was born and raised in the same city as Nick Smith. And Nick may remember going back, his parents had a business there, I believe. And my wife and I showed up at the business every once in a while. It was a good business. But 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was a primarily white Swedish community. It has transitioned over time. There were some Hispanics, Armenians, Japanese, they were all farmers. Hispanic community has risen without the interference of LULAC in that community. If you visit that community now, the businesses are vibrant. People show up. Downtown is crowded on Saturday night. There are many shops that people show up. Many Hispanics own local businesses and they're very popular. But that wasn't forced. It was a natural process. And what I see happening here is unnatural and just feels wrong. I know you can't do anything to stop it, not really in your purview. I don't know about the bright line thing. I think it works both ways. You don't have a bright line, I think you don't have to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any virtual public comment?
Yes, Mayor Dixie Lane.
Good evening again. I have been, maybe it's my research mentality, being a historian, whatever, but I have had a lot of questions about this particular process that we're going through right now. And let me say, I'm not against districts. I'm just looking for the best way to do this. And I've asked a lot of questions, and those 5 meet and greets that I mentioned with the public, this was a topic that came up, and we spent 30 plus or minus minutes on it in each one of those. Nobody understands it. Nobody knows what's going on. They had a lot of questions, as did I. And so I did my homework, And I found out there is so much research about how this works, how it's worked well, how it's failed, what to do. And this research goes back as far as 1998 up to current. So, and there's a lot of data collected so far and everything. And I looked at also a lot of, Northern California cities to see those ones that have gone to district, how it's worked and how many people are on the ballot in November for each of the districts that they have available. So, and I found the National League of Cities has a lot of information, and they pulled it together based on a lot of research, and they talked about that there are 3 common variations, not 2, 3 common variations, and they are at large, district, and a mixed system. And at large system, they said that in summary, they said the council members at a large system are more impartial, rise above the limited perspective of a single district, and concern themselves with the problems of the whole community. The vote trading between council members may be minimized and when they're at large as opposed to when they're in districts. And the number of candidates available for re-election tends to be larger, contrary to what we've been talking about. And it says that the at-large can weaken the representation of particular groups and on things like that. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to jump forward. And when they're at districts, the single council member, they tend to be more in conflict all the time, and that's what we don't need. And then the mixed system, they said more than 20% of municipalities combine these 2 methods by electing some council members at large and some from districts. And I strongly recommend that we keep our 6 council members, 3 or 4 districts. So and then the other 2 council members are at large along with the mayor. And they said when you have more districts than you have at large, it tends not to be a problem at all, and you can have the mix, and that they and it stands up more strongly to a constitutional scrutiny. So I have a lot of information, it's out there, and I strongly recommend that you look at it, because I think that we need to, I really want to be involved in this. Okay, thank you.
No further hands, Mayor.
Council discussion. Councilmember Coletti.
Well, I'll just ask the city attorney to address some of the comments that were made by the last caller, namely this notion that a hybrid model could be substituted from going from at-large to this hybrid, a combination of at-large and by district. My understanding of the CVRA is that that doesn't contemplate that. Is that correct?
Well, I don't see anything in the CVRA that contemplates a mixed system of at-large or, in districts in the same city. And of all the cities that have transitioned to districts, I don't know of any that have done, let's call that a hybrid model of whatever name you want to give it. I've never seen it or heard of it.
Okay, thank you. I think perhaps what may have happened there is that she was looking at a national system or a compilation of of cities nationally instead of just within California. That's all. Thank you.
I had Councilmember Beck.
No, go ahead.
I had a question. This might take a long discussion, but I'm only looking for a short one. So how are the residences of council members taken into account when maps are drawn? Are they identified? Is the public identified that, hey, council members live on this street and this block and so forth? And is that a concern? Can council take into account where each other lives when the maps are approved?
That would be a good question to ask of NDC, but I believe that there was a time in the past where the residents of the council members could be considered when drawing the maps, but I believe there may have been a change in the law on that recently that would not allow that. But if you could allow me to get back to you on that, because that's definitely gonna. I'm definitely gonna have a 100% answer on that the next time we talk about this, so that you'll be aware of what the rule is.
Thank you. Yeah, I realize that that's really not on the agenda tonight, but it seems to me Pacific Grove, that's probably a key issue because there's so little variation in these demographics.
I believe
across the
what,
city.
if I recall correctly, one of the things that NDC will do is identify the different criteria that you look to, like there's like communities of interest and various other factors. I mean, you don't just, close your eyes and start drawing circles of the city. I mean, there is some process to this, and there's a method to it. And I'll make sure that when reviewing that, we will have a definite answer for you on your question about whether you can consider the residents of council members.
Thank you. Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. What I will be doing is, just for an example, is using the district map right now. And with our candidates who are running, and just curious how many would be unopposed. I think that would be a good test to see how this falls into, electing our next council, if that were to if we were in place with it right now. Because that's my major concern with too many districts, we end up having unopposed candidates. So that's a test I'm going to be doing. I know they have 6 districts, but if anything, I would love to see 4 districts if that were to happen. And I think that's the reason I'm in favor of Measure Z as well. But I would certainly like to do that as an example, just to see how many would be in the same district and how many would be running unopposed. And that is a concern. And I saw it happen in Monterey. It just, that's the most concerning to me, is having candidates just being unopposed. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I really want to thank, Brian and our city attorney's office for a pretty masterful job with the legal on this. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. We got 4 very complex things we're doing tonight. So I just want to thank you for doing this work and so thoroughly. The amount of work that's gone into this has been a lot, and I appreciate it. I'm certainly in favor of these 4 motions. I think we need to move this forward. The problem is the law. I mean, that's really the issue. And so, while we can find a lot of issues with potentially, going to districts and things like that, we have to do this because otherwise we're going to be on the hook for many millions of dollars in legal fees, and we really don't want to do that. I can't do that. So that is really the issue. But we're going to have to we have to react to what the circumstances are. And so that our decision-making process is to deal with what is in front of us. And so I think we do need to move forward and create these districts, and it's going to be a fork in the road for the voters to decide the Measure Z and however they decide. And then the maps will be drawn in that fashion, which is why we have our number 3 here. You get the extension to the end of Q1 of 25 to give us time to figure all that out and get all the work done, and work with our demographers in order to draw these maps appropriately. So I'm certainly in favor of moving this forward. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Peduri.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask a question, but since everybody's tossing their thoughts about Measure Z, I want to tell you that I'm against Measure Z. And I do believe that it'll increase the workload for the existing council members as a result. But that's my stance. But my question was to Mr. Burek. So you said that you're going to jot a question down, get back to us related to that question. Is this the forum for asking all these questions? Because I thought we would have plenty of time to ask these questions when we hire the demographer, when you go through the motions, because I have a number of questions. And I think we probably all have a lot of questions related to this matter. But is this the forum to jot these down, to communicate?
My advice is that questions regarding what the factors are that can be considered when drawing the maps would not be a question for tonight. That would be a question for when the maps are being drawn. And it would also be one that would actually be in advance of them being drawn during the public information sessions. Remember, I had mentioned that there were 2 public hearings that occur before the maps are drawn, and the information I think that you're asking about would more appropriately be considered at those hearings.
Okay, thank you. And that's the direction that I'm going with is technically speaking, this is not an overnight process. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for the public to comment, for the council members to comment, and hopefully we'll all come to a point where all of us agree on the direction moving forward. Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a real quick comment, also thanking you for the clarity with which you're explaining complex issues, because the real goal here is to have the transparency for the public and for council, of course. But we do hear the public's concerns. We have many of the same concerns, but as was stated, being that we have to do what is required and prescribed by law, we really appreciate the efforts that you are taking to make this as transparent a process as possible and to really let the public know what is the process for going forward, and helping them really understand the reason for the Measure Z election again is specifically so that they have a say in whether we're drawing the maps for the 4 or 6 districts. So I think it's important that that's a key component that people are aware of, that this really is their opportunity to be a part of that decision-making process. Thank you.
All right, ready for a motion?
Sure, well, I can make a motion there. And I'm gonna ask the city attorney, Mr. Perrick, would you like 4 motions, or is it okay if we do 1 on this?
You can move the recommended actions.
Okay, well, I'll move the balance, all 4 actions, recommended actions.
And a second. Okay. Councilmember, this is discussion on the motion. Councilmember Coletti.
One point of clarification for the city attorney. Are the districts there divided based on number of voters, right? Is that how it's done, or is it based on the number of residents?
I will defer that question to the information hearings that we're going to have, but I've made notes of the questions that have been asked tonight, and we'll certainly address those and other questions too. I think that this is a good opportunity to gain an understanding of what the process is. So one of my favorite sayings is, let's put a pin in that one for now. We'll bring that one back along with the question the mayor asked, and we'll bundle that with other questions that may come up, and the public may have questions as well. And that is one of the reasons that we've retained NDC, because of their experience in this area. So we'll certainly include that discussion in the initial hearings.
Well, I appreciate that. My understanding is it's based on the number of voters. So if Measure Z is adopted, and I do support Measure Z, we would be dividing the city into 4 districts, which would mean 2,500 voters per district. If we were to not pass Measure Z, which I'm not in favor of, then it would we'd be down to 1,600 voters per district. So I think it's pretty obvious what the best model is for representing the residents.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Could I just get the second, the person
Pardon?
who seconded that motion?
I did.
Is
Already did.
Smith was first and Pedori was second.
Thank you.
All right. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you to the public for participation. Thank you to the staff, my colleagues. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.